It's time for
On the Victory Homefront
with Jamie. Hello to all the Rosies and Homefront Joes, and welcome back to another episode of On the Victory Homefront. Today, we're talking about something iconic to the 1940s, and especially to the World War II years, the red lip. It's bold, it's classic, and it's instantly recognizable. But during World War II, lipstick was more than just a beauty trend. It was something much bigger. It became a symbol of confidence, of resilience, of femininity in a time when everything else was changing. Because as women stepped into roles they had never held before, on factory floors, in offices, in fields, and even in the military uniforms, there was still a cultural expectation that they maintain a very specific image. And that image included lipstick. Now, at the center of this story is maybe somebody you might have heard of or you might not have heard of, and that is Elizabeth Arden. But before she became part of the war effort, she had already built an empire. Elizabeth Arden rose to become one of the most powerful women in business in the early 20th century. She founded her company in 1910 and quickly became known for something revolutionary at that time. She didn't just sell cosmetics. She promoted beauty as a routine, a discipline, and a science. Her salons, most famously her Red Door salon on Fifth Avenue in New York, offered not just products, but full beauty regimens, skincare, makeup, and education on how women should look and care for their appearance. By the time World War II began, Arden wasn't just a businesswoman. She was an authority, a woman whose name was synonymous with modern beauty standards. And that's exactly why the military came to her. As women began entering service, leaders in the U.S. Marine Corps, particularly those overseeing the Women's Reserve, recognized that appearance would play a role in discipline, public perception, and recruitment. There were real concerns at the time that women taking on traditionally male roles might be seen as losing their femininity, so they made a deliberate decision. They turned to Elizabeth Arden and asked her to help develop a standardized cosmetic look for women in uniform. And Arden delivered. She created a coordinated set of cosmetics, including lipstick, rouge, and nail polish, carefully designed to complement military uniforms. And from that collaboration came one of the most famous shades in history, Montezuma Red. Bold, unmistakable color created to match the red trim of Marine Corps uniforms. And this wasn't just suggested, it was issued. Makeup became part of the uniform. Now, alongside this, women in service were expected to maintain grooming standards, and many bases provided designated spaces where women could tend to their appearance, places with mirrors, basic supplies, and time set aside for personal upkeep. Now, these were not glamorous beauty salons, but they served an important purpose. They offered routine, a sense of normalcy, and a way for women to maintain their identity in a highly structured environment. Now, while Elizabeth Arden didn't run these spaces herself, her influence was clearly felt within them. Through her products and through her 1943 guide, On the Double, she helped define what military beauty standards look like. Now, that book is out of print, and it is incredibly hard to find. However, I do have a printed copy. And so I'm going to read just a little bit that is in this printed copy of Elizabeth Arden's book On the Double. Now, this is mostly focused on hair, but it does recommend other colors for different branches of the military. So though she may not have designed specific ones for the wax or the waves like she did the Marine Corps, she still has recommendations in her line that would go very well with the uniform. So the intro to this book starts, good grooming is essential to a uniform, and well cared for hair is essential to good grooming. In the following pages, I present a series of hair fashions for the woman in uniform. They are named On the Double, in your honor, because I realize you have so little time for yourself and much in your life must be done on double quick time. Each of the coiffures, that's a hairstyle, can be arranged by you easily, and there are diagrams to help you. Follow them step by step, and you can achieve the style you like best. elaborate coiffures, extreme height, and too many curls quarrel with the simplicity of tailored lines. Flyaway hair, bunching out haphazardly under your cap does nothing for you and nothing for your uniform. A shining planned look is much more appropriate, much more becoming. This does not mean a hard look. Your hair can be soft and feminine without appearing untidy and overdone. And so here is a photo, and I was pretty confident, but I didn't add this into my script that I wrote for this podcast, that Elizabeth Arden had powder rooms. And so there's a photo here, and I will try to upload it and put it here. At the Elizabeth Arden Powder Room at the Service Women's Center in the Baltimore Hotel, New York, where girls in the service of the United Nations are welcome, one of the several sponsored by the National Security, Kappa Kappa Gamma. And so I will put those pictures on the screen if I haven't already. And so as I said, I was pretty sure that there were rooms of Elizabeth Arden powder rooms. And sure enough, in her book, does show that there are some. Now, I don't know how many there were in the country. I'm actually going to look into that after this podcast, and I will probably put it below. But yes. So there was more to her intro, and she talks about how she's not just tailoring to the Marine Corps, she's also tailoring to the Coast Guard. She has it as Coast Guard on here. We know them as SPARs for the women. Navy, which would be the Waves. The Women's Army Corps. So she does mention all of those in this next paragraph on this next page. And then I really wish I could show you all just more of these images. I was actually quite surprised at how short these haircuts were, because I feel like most of the photos that I see of women in uniform, they still had longer hair than what I'm seeing in these photos. This is not an updo. This is her haircut. And so this is for the wax, and it gives an idea on what hairstyle or haircut would look best for their uniform. And then she does talk a little bit about lipstick in here, redwood lipstick, which I happen to have a tube of somewhere. Redwood lipstick sounds the right note against the muted tone of your winter uniforms. Stop red is perfect with summer khaki. Match lipstick and nail polish for a well-groomed look. Renoir pink powder over a light Rosetta bronze all-day foundation gives the skin a radiant glow. And it talks about it being long-lasting and looking natural. Here's even more for the wax, more hairstyle ideas. That is a beautiful style right there. This is for someone with shoulder-length hair. So beautiful, beautiful illustrations. And then we go on to the waves. Do you see how short her hair is? And it's a bob. And so for the waves, we've got Victory Red Lipstick is all its name implies with the businesslike navy of your service uniforms. Radiant Peony is quite wonderful with your dress whites. Nail polish to match shows a smart attention to detail. Dark blue has a tendency to drain color from the skin, so pink-toned Lucetta powder over dark Rachel foundation corrects this. And so that just gives you an idea what Elizabeth Arden did for the women in the military. And of course we have the Marines. And there were other colors that went with the Marines. She's mentioning a schoolhouse red lipstick. And there's a nail polish too of the same vibrant color. Dark Rachel powder over rose, I think it says Rose Rachel foundation. Some of the print is a little light because this is a copy. Here's the Navy nurse. She has a page on the Army nurse. And then she even has, you can see the pin curl styles that she is recommending in order to get some of these looks that she talks about in here. And here's the answer to the question I had asked myself at the beginning of this, and that was how many Elizabeth Arden rooms that there were, where there appears to have been 3. Because on the back here, it states where they are. It says service women are cordially invited to visit the Service Women's Centers sponsored by Kappa Kappa Gamma. There is an Elizabeth Arden lounge in each of the following centers. Biltmore Hotel in New York City, looks like Hayward Hotel in LA, California, and YWCA in St. Louis, Missouri. So there you go. So as I mentioned, she really helped define what military beauty standards look like. Because the truth is, beauty standards didn't fade during wartime, they intensified. Women stepped into roles traditionally held by men, mechanics, drivers, clerks, and they faced scrutiny. There was a widespread fear that this kind of work would make a woman masculine, and makeup became a response to that fear. A statement said, "We can do this work and still be women." But this story doesn't just stop at the military. On the home front, the red lip took on a life of its own. Women working in factories, our Rosie the Riveters wore it. Women tending victory gardens wore it. Women rationing, waiting, working, and holding families together wore it. You wore it to the store. You wore it to buy war bonds. You wore it to the canteen. Wherever you were volunteering for the war service, you would wear red lipstick. And it wasn't just about looking nice. It was about morale. It was about presenting strength in the face of uncertainty. Advertisements at the time reinforced this idea that keeping up your appearance wasn't vanity, it was patriotic. Looking polished meant you were doing your part to keep spirits high, to maintain normalcy, and to show that even in wartime, American women would not lose themselves. Can you imagine if you were off fighting for war and you were trying to look back at the home front, or even you were somebody working at a war factory and you were looking at society? What would help you keep your morale up? Somebody who was put together, who looked like they were maintaining their identity, maintaining their strength through wartime. I mean, that would be so much stronger to keep me going, to say, hey, I can do this too, instead of somebody who looked down on their luck, who looked ragged. It was incredibly visually strengthening to the home front, to our boys who were serving overseas. And the red lip became part of that identity. It was bright, visible, and unapologetic. A quiet but powerful way of saying, we are still here and we are still strong. Now, lipstick wasn't officially rationed during the war. In fact, it was seen as something being very important for morale. But there were shortages in materials, which meant it wasn't always easy to find. So when women could get their hands on it, they held on to it. And this reminds me of a movie. I have a movie suggestion for you all if you want to take me up on this. It is called Tender Comrade from 1943. It is starring Ginger Rogers. It's set on the World War II home front, and it follows a group of women whose husbands are away at war. And one of the scenes in this movie, one of the girls living in this house that they share, she is hoarding all these lipstick tubes. And she feels like she is going against the war effort because she is holding on to all these lipstick tubes. And so that reminded me of how materials were sometimes making getting lipstick difficult. And now something else I want to bring up about red lipstick, and you will see this a lot on social media and other areas. And you may have heard the claim that Adolf Hitler, he hated red lipstick, and that wearing it for us was an act of defiance. Now, it is a powerful idea, but historically, I don't think that there's any strong evidence confirming that as fact. So what we do know is that Nazi ideology promoted a more natural look and discouraged heavy cosmetics. So a red lip would probably fall under that. So while bold makeup may not have aligned with those ideals, the idea that Hitler specifically targeted red lipstick is best understood as a wartime narrative, and it was symbolic but not really verified. But still, that symbolism holds, because whether or not he hated it, women wore it anyway. And while Elizabeth Arden played a major role, she wasn't the only force shaping wartime beauty. There is Helena Rubinstein, who emphasized the importance of skincare and complexion, the very foundation of the face. She introduced wartime shades like regimental red and others with names tied directly to military culture. And then there was Max Factor, who helped define what we might think of as the complete wartime face. Through his color harmony system, women were taught how to coordinate foundation, powder, rouge, and lipstick into one polished look. And products like pancake makeup and True Color lipstick made that look practical and accessible. And Revlon extended beauty beyond the face, encouraging women to match their lipstick with their nail polish, creating a fully coordinated appearance from face to fingertips. Together, these companies helped shape an image of femininity that was strong, intentional, and visible. And it is something that has grown incredibly iconic to the 1940s and especially the war years. But in the end, this story, it isn't just about makeup. It's about women navigating new roles, challenging expectations, and finding ways to hold on to their identity in the middle of a global conflict. It's about morale. It's about perception, and it's about power, expressed in ways that history doesn't always recognize. And sometimes that power look like a bold red lip. So whether on the front lines or here on the home front, remember, history isn't just found in battles and headlines. It's found in the everyday choices, the quiet acts of resilience, and even in the smallest details, like a swipe of lipstick before walking out the door. I want to thank you all for joining me for this episode of On the Victory Homefront. I enjoy having you pop in and following along. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and share with your friends and family. And until next time, my friends, remember, victory is in the everyday.